And we are live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Chris's Speaker's Corner. Thank you for joining me for this live stream. I have a very well respected and honored guest with us here today. This is Saint Murad, who I'm just going to pause my YouTube in the background because I can hear myself speaking, and that is incredibly annoying. But yes, I have Saint Murad here with us today. He is back for another episode. He was here with us just a few weeks ago, where he introduced his own Quran translation that he has produced himself as a native Arab speaker and as an ex-Muslim. He has a keen interest in presenting the Quran in as honest way as possible by giving the most accurate translation possible. And he has a very unique way of doing that sidesteps many of the other pitfalls that other people fall into when they do their translations. And you can watch the first video. I'll put a link to it down in the description box if you haven't already seen it. But in this video, it's going to be continuing from that. We have Murad here to explain to us how he managed to achieve this without using the standard Islamic narrative. And it's, like I said before, it's an honor to have you here, Murad. So I'm going to hand over to you, and you can take it away.
Well, thank you very much for having me once again, Chris. It's an honor for me to be on your channel the second time. The first time we talked about the standard Islamic narrative and what is it exactly. It is anything outside of the Quran. It's the Hadith, it's the Sunnah, and all of this stuff, all of this literature. It came 200 years after what we know about Muhammad if he existed. So all of this material is kind of Abbasid and beyond. Some of it is also Ottoman. So this material, what I argue, is that it was superimposed over the Quran and then it hid the primitive layer of the Quran. The primitive layer is actually the Syriac hymns that came from Syria, Iraq, Jerusalem, all of this stuff. But the Abbasids, they had a different agenda. They started putting it as the layers of the onion, and then later the Ottomans added even more and more layers. So any Quran translation that we have today, it uses this standard Islamic understanding of the Quran without going back to a dictionary, without going back to material prior to the Quran, which came before it. It just uses the sin. So what I will be showing people today is my translation, how I actually did it without touching this sin whatsoever. And if I may, I will now share my screen to show the people the presentation.
Yep, we can see it now. It's now on screen.
Okay, so this is the first non-Islamic Quran translation. We can call it that. This is the Saint Murad Quran translation. It is based on language only. Let me tell you my story. I am a native Arabic speaker from the Middle East. Arabic is my mother tongue. I have never studied in any Islamic institution, and I say that this is a plus because now I am not polluted with the sin propaganda. Yes, I was a Muslim, but not to the extent that I know everything in the sin. Throughout this journey, I was in a game of chess with the Quran. It was very difficult. The first time I ever encountered English Quran translations actually was when I first made YouTube videos with Mel of Islamic Origins, and back then it was called Sneakers Corner channel with an N. And here's how the story goes. I just left him a comment because he made some, let's say, very minor mistakes in Arabic. I told him, let's have a chat. And then he told me, after we spoke for a bit, he told me, would you like to make a video together? I told him, sure. So the very first video, we were going to talk about Alexander the Great. But I had to quote the Quran, so I had to use English translations. I didn't know of any, because why would I? I only read it in Arabic. So I found the Sahih International and Abdullah Yusuf Ali. And then I said, okay, no problem. Let's just quote them to get the job done, even if they're not perfect. But as time went on, I found out that I had to translate my own verses just to make a YouTube video. Then again, as time went on, I said, why not translate just the important chunks of the Quran? And again, fast forward, I said, why not make this project to actually translate the entire Quran without the use of the sin? Do you want to jump in?
No, this is great so far. Like, I absolutely love that you started the story with Mel from Sneakers Corner, and I remember when his channel was called Sneakers Corner. It's now called Islamic Origins. If any of you are interested in looking at his work, but yeah, this is amazing. Keep going.
So, a sinless Quran translation. We all actually have a common enemy, and that is the sin. The only reason we trust the sin is that we know that it doesn't have any alternative, valid alternative. The sin is actually hiding the primitive layer of the Quran, which was suppressed mostly by the Abbasids. I told myself, never touch the sin and let's translate the Quran without it. I knew that I was the only one to do it. So I swore an oath to deliver the people who watch my videos the best possible Quran translation without the sin. Not just because I am very passionate about the subject, but also because these people, they gave me so much love on YouTube and I just want to give back. So here, what do we have? We have all Quran translators, whether Muslim or non-Muslim. What did they have next to them as they were translating the Quran? They had the sin. That makes them an orange. Now, what did I have next to me as I was translating the Quran? I had linguistics. This is very different. That makes me an apple. And I say, do not compare apples to oranges. And this is the question. If someone asks me, Murad, what's the difference between you and them? Well, I've used an entirely different material. Therefore, the translation is entirely different results. So, how did I do this? First thing first, checking the word and all its variations in every single Quranic verse. I used an Arabic Quran tool which finds the Quranic word in every single verse and counts them. It's called Al Munaqqib Al Qurani. It is a very primitive tool, but it's good because it's just Arabic only. I used it. So the Quran mining tool would be how I translate this word. This really helped me get to the closest understanding to how the author actually intended the word without the pollution of the sin. So the Quran is actually a big book, it's not small. So if you want to know the meaning of a word, you have a lot of options within the Quran. The very same word is there all over the place. Just check it, and then logically you will get very close to what the author intended. Let's say the word nasakha. It's mentioned 4 times in the Quran. Now, the word nasakha is mentioned 4 times in the Arabic. In my translation, one English word for this Arabic word. Why? Because the words I choose are so accurate that they fit like a glove in every single context. This is the exercise that I was doing. I did this with every single word in the Quran, not once, but multiple times. This helped me create my next step, and that is creating a concordance. So, first step in the Quran translation that I've done was creating a concordance, and now I ask you, what do you think so far?
I think that's like an amazing way of going about making as close as you can to the actual truth a Quran as how it really would have been. So you don't just take the standard Islamic narrative, you don't just apply that on top of it and say, well, this Arabic word in this verse means this, and in this a totally different verse, but the same word, oh, it must mean something totally different because otherwise it means something I don't want it to mean. Instead, you've made sure that you've been consistent and you've used the same Arabic terms across all of the Quran holistically. I love that. I think that's amazing. And the fact that you then took this as a basis to make your concordance is awesome.
Yeah, so it's basically that I told myself, let the Quran interpret the Quran. If you do not know the meaning of a word, go to other verses. It's gonna elucidate and make everything clear.
Exactly.
At least to a point. You see?
Hmm.
So I started by creating my own concordance from scratch. I know that there are some Arabic concordances online. I never used them. I said this work has never been done before, even if there was something, it's not that good. So I started from scratch with every single word present in the Quran. This brought up a lot of surprises to the surface. Now, like a pencil, the more you sharpen it, the better. My concordance was becoming sharper and sharper by the day, sometimes serendipitously correcting errors from 14th centuries. Now, someone could ask me, Murad, can't I just use ChatGPT to get the correct Arabic non-sin meanings of words? I know a lot of YouTubers are playing around with this. I would say no. I personally tried this, but ChatGPT, it's just fed with Islamic propaganda. So sometimes it's more Muslim than Muslims themselves. What do you think?
Right. So ChatGPT, it's just a tool and it gets its information from somewhere. So that standard Islamic narrative, the sin that you were trying to avoid, if you use ChatGPT, you'd end up using the standard Islamic narrative again, because that's what ChatGPT would be using.
Exactly. So now the concordance got sharper. Now, another thing that I have done is then I moved to a step which is not average. I have actually read the entire dictionary of Oxford, but the abridged version, to be clear, over 4,000 pages. Why, would you ask? To increase my vocabulary. I highlighted a lot of words that I knew might be in the Quran. So after this, it further strengthened my concordance. Do you have any comment?
No, this sounds good so far. It's impressive that you did that. Like, yeah, it's a lot of dedication, a lot of hard work went into that.
Yeah, it took me like almost a month every day reading
Just
some
reading.
pages.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Nice.
English only, so not English Arabic. English, because if it's English to Arabic, then again you have some opinions going into it. It's not, I just wanted that an English speaker is explaining to me what this word means in English. Next, I moved to an actual linguistic source in Arabic. I read the entire book called الفروق اللغوية للعسكري, The Linguistic Differences by Al-Askari. This is a big book. Why? To discern the very subtle differences between every Arabic synonym. I have also noticed that Muslims do not respect the Quran at all. They say it is a linguistic miracle, yet they don't obsess over linguistics. They don't read books like Al Askari. Instead, they go to the sin and they say, well, Akrima said, this guy said, that guy said, without any linguistic basis. So, this step, of course, further strengthened the concordance. Now, another thing would be English words of Arabic origin. I have read and looked into all possible English words of Arabic origin. Why? So that the English word of my choice is not just accurate in meaning, but sometimes also a direct loan word and sounds the same. But don't worry, I have only used them in rare cases where the meaning and the sound are the same. So they are rare, but they are like gems. They are good. I like them. So this further strengthened my concordance. Do you want to say anything at this point?
No, this sounds good so far. Yeah, I'm interested to see where you go with it.
So at this point, the concordance was almost 100% perfected. But then I wanted even more precision. In Arabic, just like in English, there are words that are formal, informal, humorous, vulgar, poetic, and so on. So after I perfected my concordance, I checked to find the perfect fit also. So is it enemy or is it foe? Why is it important? Because the Quran had multiple authors, not one. So if you try and track or trace how a certain author is speaking, you will know that this is the poetic author and now this is the formal author, for example. I also translated the English words back into Arabic to see what comes out so that I can further choose a better word. And I kept doing this back and forth, back and forth. Now, archaic or modern English, what did I use? I asked, do you think we have the luxury to choose? I don't care. Anything that gets the job done. So my translation is actually a mixture of both, because this is the only way to encompass a Quranic word. Now, why do I have archaic pronouns? Well, in English, you have a very firm translation to rely on with the Bible. You have the King James Version, and you also have very powerful concordances. This is not the case with Arabic or the Quran. When it comes to the Quran, we do not have anything this reliable. That's why I had to do it this way. So, is it necessary? Of course. And let me show you why. In Arabic, you have anta would be singular, male singular, antum plural, antuma pair. In English, most translations, it's you, and you. But in the Murad translation, it's thou for singular, ye plural, both of you or the two of you, depending on the context, in my translation. Because the Quran is already obscure, it doesn't need to be more obscure by changing and ruining the pronouns. You see?
Right, I see. So you're saying that when we want to perfectly capture what the real meaning of an Arabic word is, and we want to express that in English, we have to use the fullness of the English language. So we can't just say, well, we're going to stick to formal or informal words. We're going to include both, and whatever happens to be the word that most closely matches to the true Arabic meaning, that's the word that we're going to use. And that, of course, is not
Exactly.
just in modern English, but also archaic English, old English, whatever happens to meet the meaning the best.
Exactly. And remember, the Quran is also a mumbo jumbo of these words. It also has archaic plus a little bit of modern. So I tried my best to mirror that. So it's not that I am going further from the Arabic. No, I'm getting closer this way. So I started adding the final touches to my concordance. The concordance itself isn't for sale. I say this is like the KFC secret recipe, but it's all contained in my Quran translation. It took me 4 years to finish my concordance.
I
Now
like
that
how
my
you say the concordance is like the KFC secret recipe. That makes me laugh.
yeah
That's funny.
yeah, so you can have all the KFC you want, but you're not gonna get the secret recipe. So this concordance is not for sale. Now that my concordance is complete, I then head to the Quran. And since I like being neat, I have manually dissected each surah of the Quran into PowerPoint slides like this, taking every page as a snapshot so that every PowerPoint slide has half a Quranic page with this blank box next to it. Here is where I translate. This task took me a few days to complete, but it was tiring, very tiring. So this was the next step, of course, dissecting every surah into PowerPoint form. Now the concordance straight into the translation. This was the next step, start translating. So I basically started copying my concordance into my translation, and this resulted in over 90% consistency rate. If you read my translation, you will find that it has very few vocabulary because the words are chosen in a very careful manner. All other translations are not 10% even consistent, and they don't care about consistency. So when you read any other English translation, you will think that the Quran is very rich in Arabic and it has all these words, which is not true. So this step took me just a few months. So you see, Chris, 4 years concordance, the translation itself just a few months because I have done my homework. You see?
Right. So like the concordance was so much of the groundwork to set you up for the translation. So when you had that massive work that was the concordance done, like actually applying that and producing the translation was not as much of a heavy task as making the concordance was.
Yeah, not at all. So with the concordance, as you see, then I started translating, basically copying my concordance, and then the Murad translation came out. Now, what about the design? I tried my best to retain the 1924 Arabic Quran, retaining all the symbols which are in the Arabic Quran, like this one, and this one, this underline. This is something that you will never find in English translations. I do not know why. I will just put them there, and if someone has a theory or someone wants to look into it, he is an adult. I have to give him this, you see? So you could say that the original Quran, mine, is a carbon copy of the original. Now, what about brackets? Do I have brackets in my translation? Well, only one form, and please just hear me out. The word rahat. Yeah, I know. But just hear me out. I will ask you if you have any other option. The word rahat in Arabic, it means a clan ranging from 3 or 7 all the way to 10 or less. This is exactly straight from the dictionary. I put it this way so that you know that this bundle of words actually represent one Arabic word. So I ask you, Chris, do you have any English word which means clan ranging from 3 or 7 all the way to 10 or less?
Ah, I see. Right. So like any idioms or any expressions that we just don't have an equivalent for in English, you have to spell it out. And I guess you use the brackets to do that, right?
Exactly, and these are the brackets that I have. They look like this because they are strange, but because I want to tell the people that this is an integral part. This is something that English just doesn't have a word for. So I have to put it this way.
So, just for anyone who doesn't know, the Quran is full of entire sections over and over and over again of in the translations of brackets where the translator has put his own words into the Quran to try and smooth over some difficult verses where either the Arabic is difficult to translate or the theology is problematic, usually because these are verses that talk about fighting the disbelievers, or these are verses where something is mentioned that is perhaps a bit spicy. Surah 65, ayah 4, maybe. Areas like this is where they tend to add their own influence. So, what Murad has done is he's done the best to remove all of that, but there is one situation where he does include them, which is this, which he's talking about here, where you have expressions and idioms. There is no English equivalent, so he has to put that in there. Otherwise, you just wouldn't know what is being, what the actual intent is behind the Arabic.
Yeah, so people they could just say clan, but you will lose detail. All of this detail is original and it's in the Arabic dictionary. Why should I lose this? The English audience wants to know this, you see?
It makes sense.
So it is an integral part of the word, not an added commentary. So please read my brackets. These are not the brackets that you are used to, bracketology. They are original and they come straight from the Arabic dictionary.
Nice. That's
Now,
good.
what about untranslated words in the Quran translation? I have some. Well, you see here, this is Dr. Gerd Puin. He worked on the Sana'a manuscript, which is believed to be the oldest Quran manuscript. It has the palimpsest that is written on the first layer, and over it there was written another layer. What does this man say about the Quran? The Quran claims for itself to be mubin or clear, but if you look at it, you will notice that every fifth sentence or so simply doesn't make sense. And then he continues, if the Quran is not comprehensible, if it can't be even understood in Arabic, then it is not translatable. Simple as that. It's not translatable. So, untranslated words are a mistake of the author. This would be Allah, not the translator. I am okay with it being considered a negative in my translation, but I am not okay with just filling the gaps. When they Arabized it, the Abbasids, they ruined it. The original meanings of these words are actually lost, and we are just trying our best to guess what these words meant. Do you have any comments so far?
Yeah, so I am aware that there are words that basically no one, they're just lost as to what the original meaning is. It's just a random Arabic word that no one really understands. And of course, the standard Islamic narrative will just take that word, pretty much take some sort of tradition, like, oh, people tend to say it's this, let's just go with this. And so they translate it into whatever's most convenient for them. And what I find funny is often that differs across different translations, right? So one translation will say apple, for example, one will say pear, one will say orange, because because they actually don't know what the word means. They're just guessing, and they all have taken different guesses.
Yeah, and they use guesses from people they say this man was close to the Prophet. So, as if his guess is some sort of genius. Well, it's a very bad guess, you see? This comes straight from the sin also. Now, I want to test your cooking skills for a bit. If I were to give you white sugar, eggs, baking soda, vanilla, and milk, what would you make in the kitchen?
I think that would be a cake.
Yeah. So you can make an amazing cake. This would be like the non Muslim translators of the Quran. Or you can make a horrible cake like most Muslim translators of the Quran. But the moral of the story is the same ingredients gave you the same results. Now, on the other hand, if I give you yeast, flour, oil, pepperoni, and mushrooms, now what would you make out of this?
Like a pizza?
Yes, a pizza. So the
Nice.
Murad translation is the only pizza because it used different ingredients, therefore, different results. In other words, we have the sin rendition of the Quran. This would have the Muslims and the non Muslims, it will make them oranges. And on the other uh, side, you have the original primitive meaning of the Quran, then it would make me the apple. So, this is a big difference. The people, they can't just assume that this is another translation. It's very, very different in almost every single word. So, what makes my Quran translation unique? Well, you see, my translation, it could be the missing link. People told me, Murad, you have to tell the people why is your product better. I I told them better than what? It is the only product to come into existence. So it is the first Quran translation that ignored the entirety of the sin. This translation will give you the hidden layer of the Quran, which was suppressed by the Abbasids and their sin, standard narrative. You can say it serves as the missing link between the time of Muhammad, if he existed, till the Abbasid Caliphate. So my translation will get you much closer to understanding the secrets of the Arabic language. Yes, it is not the final answer. The final answer might be a future Aramaic translation, but I will need to consult with a lot of professors. But still, a big step towards cracking Islam's code. So allow me to illustrate. You have here Muhammad, if he existed, Rashidun, or four rightly guided caliphs, again, if they existed, because we are not sure, the Umayyads and the Abbasids. All Quran translations, they work with Abbasid material and beyond. But with my translation, you are close to this area. Nothing from the Abbasids, you might be close to the Umayyad understanding of the text, or Rashidun or Muhammad, if these guys even existed. So, would you like to say anything at this point?
Yeah, I think it's good that you've identified two key things here. The first is that the Abbasids have obviously influenced the understanding of the Quran in terms of the actual Arabic and how the Arabic should be understood. And you're saying, well, what my translation does is it looks at the hidden layer. When you remove that Abbasid understanding, you get to look at the Quran as it was actually intended to me, like the actual meaning is that is intended, and not just what the Abbasids want you to think that happened 750 AD onwards. And you also mentioned that the other key was the fact that a lot of words in the Quran are not actually Arabic. They're actually like Syriac or some form of Aramaic. And you said that if you wanted to go even further, the next step would be to actually do a full translation based on the Aramaic. So it's interesting that you've identified there are two key issues here.
Yeah, exactly. So you will not realize how much deception there is in other Quran translations, excluding the Osama Dakduk and Robert Spencer, before you read mine. Almost every single word in my translation is different than what you are used to. Now, here are a list of things or words or concepts that are not in my Quran translation: revelation, book, people of the book, sent down, unseen, disbelievers, infidels, battle of Badr, Yathrib, wife, husband, pair, everlasting, abrogation, hell, hellfire, missiles, forbidden, trial, test, good news, crucify, I seek refuge, lawful, unlawful, sedition, private parts, terror, booty, spoils of war, and fight. As you can see, these words are not in my translation. Of course, you have something to say here.
Yeah. So, I mean, the last part's really interesting. Fight, spoils of war, booty, terror, and private parts. I mean, you could summarize large entire chunks of the Quran just with those words alone in terms of how we normally see things. People of the book, you don't think that? Okay, that's really interesting because people of the book, that's something that obviously occurs in a lot of other translations quite frequently. So look, abrogation. I remember that from the last video we did. You said that you don't think that like Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 2, Ayah 106, the word there should be understood as abrogation. So I remember that one. But yeah, it's interesting. And the word crucify, you don't think that's there. This is obviously very radical. Like this is very significant that these words you aren't found in it.
You know why do they have these words in their translation? Most 90% of the time, it's because they have the Bible in their mind. They are thinking of the King James Bible. So that's why they say good news. They are getting closer to the gospel. That's why they say crucify,
Ah,
trial,
right.
test, all of this stuff. It's very biblical. Even the word sin is not in my translation. Just the idea of the biblical sin of Adam is never in the Quran. The Quran says guilt, it says being charged, it says stuff that's more secular, stuff that you can say in a court of law. That's why Lloyd de Jong, when he looks at the Sharia, he gets very close to the real understanding of the Quran. It has nothing to do with the Bible in a very large sense.
Interesting.
So some books they made a major shift. Robert Spencer's Did Muhammad Exist? There is a before and an after. No one ever asked this question before him. And this book sparked my personal um, enthusiasm to look into all of this. Also, you have Hajarism, Making of the Islamic World, Patricia Cronin Cook, a before and an after. So I foresee an era where there will be a before and after this translation. Not because I think highly of myself, but because this work in the future it cannot be ignored. Because when people see how I cracked some of the code of the Quran using just the Arabic dictionary, they can never unsee it. You have anything to say here?
No, this is really interesting. You piqued my interest when you talked about the major shifts, Patricia Crone and Michael Cook being one of them. But I do think that this is also just hugely significant. The fact that we have a much more just honest and direct and a totally different paradigm of translating the Quran that isn't just what the standard Islamic narrative says.
Yeah, Patricia Crone and Cook, they basically say that everything came much too late, 200 years late, and the Quran had not, it didn't have much to do with it. I say, well, okay, yes, I do believe you. Now let's look at the Quran without the 200-year gap. So that's why this book, you can say it's a revisionist work but actually is trying to reconstruct what actually happened. Now, what will you lose if you do not get my translation? You see, not getting my translation will actually cost you a lot of things. One, you will never be able to know the very literal meaning of Quranic words, and the very literal meaning of the words are very interesting. You will have to succumb to lies in all other Quran translations, and you will remain in the cage of the sin. You will always wear these glasses of Bukhari al Tabari. You will always be wearing these glasses. Fourth, you will never access the pre Abbasid Caliphate understanding of the Quran. I'm not saying I'm the best, but I am much closer than you think. So, on one level, I do not want you to miss out. And on another level, I do not want you to be fooled. Now, how important is this project for you as a person? And I'm speaking to the people listening to me in the chat. Let me ask you, how important is this for you to understand the hidden layers of the Quran and get closer to cracking the code of Islam? Most of our viewers are very smart people that are actually researchers themselves. They keep digging, they keep finding gold nuggets that they give us in the comments. How important is it for you in general to spread such truth all over the internet? You see? So, yeah, before telling you this next piece of information, what do you think?
I think this is absolutely spot on. I think it's very important that people know what the actual intent behind certain Arabic words in the Quran. What is the purpose of them? Are you actually understanding things properly, or are you using a very flowery, very westernized translation that tries to hide and obscure things from you because they're embarrassed about what it actually really is getting at? And you know, the fact that you just get rid of like the brackets and don't bother trying to brush over things or to add things to make things sound more palatable, I think that in and of itself is worthwhile. Especially if you want to have conversations with Muslims and you're showing them this. You're like, look, you know, you're using the Sahih International, the Yusuf Ali version, but I mean, some of these translations they change the words, the translations in English, to imply things that are more scientifically plausible, so that they can say that the Quran has scientific miracles in it and all this sort of thing. The fact that yours cuts away at this because you don't have that agenda, you come from outside the paradigm. You're like, no, I don't need to, you know, sort of kowtail to Islamic scholarship. I can just look at this from a neutral point of view and say it as it is as a native Arabic speaker. I think that's wonderful. I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah, one of the main surprises is that when you remove the word O Muhammad that they keep shoving all over the English Qurans, you will find that most of the time the author is speaking to the reader. So say this is just directed to the reader. And also when I use the archaic pronouns, sometimes it's directed at a group of people. And then in the English translation, they put it as if it's for one person and this person is Muhammad, where in reality it is for a group of people. You see?
I think that's one of the most egregious and just horrifying mistranslations. The fact that Muhammad is just inserted in so many places, you know, in the brackets, of course, because it's not actually in the Arabic, just say, and then in brackets, oh, Muhammad. And it's like, really? Really? That's there? And then you look at the Arabic, it doesn't say Muhammad. So how are you confident it is Muhammad? Because there's nothing in the context that infers it's Muhammad. So yeah,
Also,
absolutely terrible.
also the word Allah and His Messenger, in a lot of times, if you just remove Muhammad and you read it within the context, you will find that this messenger sometimes is an angel, sometimes it's Jesus himself, sometimes it's Moses. So that's why they have to stuff Muhammad in there, so that because they fear if you read the text without the layer of the sin, you will know the truth. The truth is that Muhammad is not present in the Quran, maybe at all. You see?
Yeah, it's a real possibility. Mm.
So, this is actually the first ex Muslim translation of the Quran. If you think that this is cool, I'm talking to the chat, then please like this video.
Just to, I think this is a good time to plug this actually. For everyone who's watching, Murad's book is available for sale. I've put the link down in the description below. I've also pinned a link on the live chat as well. So if you're interested in getting Murad's translation, I think you have a sample, Murad, as well. So people can check out that sample if they want. And if they think it's, if they're impressed by the work, which I certainly was, I have a copy of the book myself. You should definitely get it, add it to your collection. It's an important thing to be able to have a actual, honest, realistic, non-flowery, non-fluffery translation of the Quran that you can use yourself, either in your own studies or when you're having dialogue with Muslims.
Okay, so now segueing into the products. There are 4 products that I'm offering the people. Just to be clear, my translation is digital only. There is no physical copy, and this is something that has to do with my personal safety, and I'm not going to talk much about it, but it's just because people are asking me. So there is an English only version. This will be a PDF, and it looks like this, and Kindle, and it looks like this. There is also an Arabic plus English, and the Arabic is on the right, the English is on the left, PDF, and also with the Kindle Arabic plus English. So the offers. There are 2 offers. One is a very low price, one is a high price. Who is the light version for? The one which has the low price. This one is for the casual viewers. These are the silent majorities who keep watching our videos, but they do not comment, but they're always there. And the price is equal to 2 regular coffees. So this is a cheap version. It is one product, complete English only PDF, but it has some limitations. The limitations are you have this watermark here, and it cannot be printed and it cannot be highlighted. And it is limited to 1,000 people only, meaning once it's out, it's out. So hurry up if you would like to get this one. You want to say something here?
No, this is looking good so far. Yeah, keep going.
Now, what about the complete package? Who is this for? This one is for the warriors who actually believe in the cause, who believe in everything we are doing. This one is not for the casual viewers. You will actually be funding much bigger future projects which you never thought possible, much bigger than this one. So that's the covenant I will actually be having with you as the audience. It's 4 products, the English only, PDF and Kindle, Arabic plus English, PDF and Kindle. So let's recap. With the light version, you have the English only PDF, and you will not get all of this. With the complete package, you have everything, plus a digital certificate designed by me for you. Now, how to download the translation? Well, of course, the link is in the description box and it's in the chat. No registration required whatsoever. No credit card fees. I take care of that for you. Of course, there is debit and credit option, Apple Pay, and Google Pay. Also, local currency is now available. So it's not just the US dollar. There is the British pound, there is the Indian currency. All of this is available. The whole thing takes 4 seconds to complete. We actually tested this. Plus, you can easily do it by your phone, so you do not need a laptop or a desktop. So you could download right away. Also, I have it on my Patreon. If people have me on their Patreon, they could just get it there. I will eventually reply to every comment from the people who got this translation. Also, you could inbox me all my questions. It's just going to take me some time to reply. Okay, what do you think so far? Because the next step, I want to tell people
This
about
is
the
great.
future project.
Yeah, so like Murad said, you have a choice. You can get the sort of more simple, lighter version, which is just the English only one, or you can go for the full package if you really want to support Murad, help him with further projects. Keep in mind, he spent many years actually developing this, and he even wrote and developed his own concordance to even do this, which is a huge amount of work and incredibly impressive, and something that I wish I could say I've done. But I mean, at this point, I don't even know Arabic. So, but for me, having the Arabic and the English is useful, because when I have conversations with Muslims, I like to be able to present the actual Arabic to them so I can show them, hey, here is a more accurate translation of your Quran. You think it says this, but really, this is the more accurate version. If we were to remove the brackets, if you were to not take Abbasid-like understandings and instead just looked at it as a sort of naked Quran, here's the Arabic, here's the English, you can make your point. So it's really good for study, and it's really good when you want to have conversations with Muslims. So pick which one best suits you.
Now, I have a disclaimer. This Quran translation assumes the Quran to be 100% Arabic. It does not include the Aramaic reading of the Quran. It is sort of like, let's give Arabic its best shot. People say the Quran is purely Arabic. Okay, this is pure Arabic. A complete Aramaic reading of the Quran would be an entirely different project with an entirely different concordance, again built from scratch. Depending on how people will respond to my content, it might be a separate project in the future.
Oh wow! I was wondering if I was thinking, wow, this might be something Murad should totally do, like as another thing. But you're actually saying, yeah, you might actually do that. Wow.
Yeah, this will be earth-shattering, but I can't do it on my own because I need very high-quality professors to help me with this. I could do the Arabic, but when it comes to Aramaic and Hebrew, of course, I am not the guy. I need to listen and humble myself to the real professors and make a lot of Zoom calls with them, a lot of meetings with them, so that we could actually pinpoint every single word. So this is a totally different project. An Aramaic reading of the Quran can't come into existence without this work being established first. Because some people tell me, Murad, why didn't you just jump into the Aramaic? A completely new Aramaic Quran concordance has to be built upon a strong Arabic concordance. It is sort of something like you can't bench press real heavy unless you have advanced the light weights first. How can you bench press this when you can't even lift this? This is the reality of the situation. Now, again, do we need another Quran translation? Let me ask you, do you actually have a Quran translation? What you have is a mere shadow of it. It is like calling this the Mona Lisa. Do we need another translation? Yes, you do, because you do not have one. And Chris, what do you think this Mona Lisa is identifying as a bee?
You probably don't know this, Murad. There's a Mr. Bean film where he sees the picture of the Mona Lisa, and he accidentally, I think he spills something on it, and he tries to remove the thing he spilled on it, but by doing so, he keeps changing the picture until it looks completely different. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's what you made me think of when you showed Mona Lisa. If anyone knows what I'm referring to there, the name of the film, put it in the chat. I know it's a Rowan Atkinson. It's a Mr. Bean film, I think, but I can't remember which one.
Yeah, I like this guy, but I do not remember what you're talking about exactly. Now, by the way, if you know of any Quran translation that is ultra literal and has no brackets, based on linguistics and not on the SIN standard Islamic narrative, then you do not need my translation. But if you do not know of any, then back to square one. You have the light version, you have the complete package. You choose what fits you better. Finally, download whenever you like, but believe me, you will be missing out on a lot of fun reading this masterpiece. And now I will unshare and get back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Murad. That's absolutely amazing. I still think it's awesome that we actually have someone who's gone to this level of effort to produce such an unbiased piece of work that is beneficial both to people who just want to read it to see what it actually says in a more accurate sense, and people who are using it for study as well, who want to have the Arabic and the English and actually start to understand, oh, okay, when I go to Muslims and present this, I can present a much more cleaner, a much more unbiased version of the Quran to them. So yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Thank you very much for...
Yeah, I'm glad that you are endorsing this work. It's very good to hear that. And I would love to hear from the audience. Of course, a lot of people, they actually have my translation. So people, they could just shoot the questions now, because there are some people that are upset. For example, the verse which deals with Jesus, they're upset. They say, why didn't you say that he died? Well, reality is, the Quran, it has three ways of saying die. One would be perish, and this is the negative way. So when we say, for example, As-Sinwar has got destroyed, it means he died. So the Quran, it says perish, and sometimes it just says die, and sometimes it says something like fulfill yourself, fulfill your soul. This means die. So when the Quran is talking about Jesus dying, it says it in the most respectful way, but it does mean die. So these are the hidden layers that they do not talk about in the English speaking world. Yeah.
That is interesting. I'm looking to see if there are any questions in the chat that are directed to you, Murad. If anyone has any questions for Murad, put them in the chat and I'll bring them up. And Murad, if Murad doesn't mind, we can do some Q&A.
Yeah, of course. I'm waiting for the questions.
I'm just trying to look through and find some. So while we do that, one of the mods is very helpfully, thank you, Andrew, put a link, just so you know. Although, to be honest with you, I don't know. It should be also at the top as well as a pinned comment for anyone who wants to click on that there. So we have a question here by Nicodemus. Where in the Quran is the word missiles found?
Well, you will find this word in all Quran translations, but I do not have it, because the word rujum comes from rajam, and it means expel. It doesn't mean missiles. But this is something that you see, Chris. This comes from the when they try to make the Quran fit with modern science, then they shoot themselves in the foot. They shoot themselves with these missiles in the foot. But the Quran never says that.
Right. That's interesting. We also have, what is the true Arabic word for swine/pig?
Well, you see, the Arabic word for khanzir, it could be understood in two different ways. One would be pig, and the other, which is in the Quran actually, is that decomposing. So decomposing flesh. Do not eat decomposing flesh, not the flesh of swine. And this is one of my surprising things in my translation, but I just got it from the Arabic dictionary.
Right. And we also have another question from Chris. How did you translate the word talif?
Well, tahrif, I have it as pervert, but the reason is this word is not really understood in the Arabic. It's very problematic. The word harf means the edge of something. So the Quran is saying that you are taking the core understanding and then moving it all the way to the edge or the fringes. So you could say, like a fringe theory. This is what they say in English now, fringe theory, like the idea that Jesus is a magic mushroom, for example. This is tahrif. This is perverting the text.
Okay, interesting. So I've come across tarif. I think if it's the same word, I think it is. You'd be used when we talk about talif al-mana or talif al-lafs, I think, if I'm pronouncing it right.
tahrif al-lafz al-ma'na.
Yeah, and it's usually understood as being something like some form of corruption of meaning or corruption of text. if I've got that right. But whether that's correct or not,
Yeah,
it's
but remember, you know the seven ahruf?
mhm.
This is the same word. Harf tahrif. This is the same word. So you could say that the seven ahruf are seven perversions of the Quran. This is the reality of the situation.
Okay, that's interesting. I did not know that. Okay,
Linguistically, this is what it means linguistically.
huh. Okay, I need to do a bit of a deep dive on that because that is quite amusing if that is the case. We have another question here. Level Up Items Gaming question: is there something in the Quran that tells them to be dishonest with the text if it doesn't fit their narrative?
With the text, I do not think so.
I
But the
don't
Quranic
think so
author,
either. From yeah,
yeah, the Quranic author is actually obsessed with people to conquer Jerusalem. And I've said this on many podcasts because this is what you get from the author. The author is very depressed and he wants these soldiers to just march on. That's why even people they say jihad is the highest level and stuff because this is actually what the Quranic author wanted. But he wanted this for a certain period of time. So you could say that the Quran um, is a manual for combat for people just at that time. It shouldn't be used today.
yeah, that makes sense. I happen to agree with that. I think that's a very interesting way of looking at what the Quran is about. We have another question here by Matthew. It said the Quran can be used as a sword and shield. How do you handle these uses? I'm not sure if he means if the Quran has a verse somewhere, or if he's just talking about some saying that people say about the Quran that it can be used as a sword and shield.
I do not understand the question also. Maybe he could
No,
elaborate more.
elaborate, Matthew, in the chat, and if I notice, I'll pick it up and we'll ask again. So Aisha's Goat says Surah 56, Ayah 37 is missing. Rob Christian translates it as Yuaban Kuhab. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that.
Yeah, عرب قحابة قحبة. Well, this comes again from the standard Islamic narrative, and it's something that I cannot confirm. Probably this word was just Syriac, and it had nothing to do with young women. So it had to do with grapes that you would take in the heaven in the afterlife. This is from a Syriac understanding.
Okay, interesting, interesting. Um, there was another. There's quite a few actually, a lot more than I was expecting, which is pretty awesome. So we have Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 2, Ayah 154 says, and do not say to whoever was killed in the way of Allah, dead ones, rather living ones, but do not feel. This sounds like Christians' born again theology. Is Muhammad dead or alive?
Um, I think he is using my translation here, but I think this comes from the Talmud. So this is a quote from a rabbi in the Talmud. And quote unquote cute Muslims, which use this in the West to say how the Quran is actually not violent at all. And remember, here he says born again theology and stuff. Maybe everything is maybe with the Quran because I opened the can of worms for people to now start asking the right questions. We are not sure anymore, you see?
Yeah, it's a first major step in the right direction. We have Old Catholic with how was the word taqwa translated, and I think I have an understanding of this word. From what I know, from what I remember, it's something along the lines of faith or piety or something like that.
Yeah, they say piety, but this word, it took me, of course, maybe a few months to crack. Taqwa, when you say in the verb form ittaqa, in Arabic you say ittaqa sharr al-halim idha ghadab, meaning try to fend off the evil of someone who is always kind because once he snaps, he is gonna be very evil. So this word means fend off evil. So taqwa, being taqi to Allah, means try to fend off or forfend his evil.
Right. Okay.
Try to
That's
hide
quite
from his wrath.
that's quite a departure from how I think Muslims understand it today. That's interesting.
Yeah,
So we have Nicodemus who did his homework. By the way, Chris, the name of the movie and why you likely couldn't remember was Bean, circa 1997, where the character travels to the US and destroys an iconic American painting. So if you ever feel like finding out what that reference I gave earlier was, Murad, or anyone else watching, that's how you can find it.
yeah, I will look that
Um,
up.
let's go in the way of Allah. Someone said, one of the mods, Houston, would this version be less boring than your 14-hour attempt to do a non-stop Quran reading? Yeah, it probably would be a lot better. It would also, I'm thinking it would probably be shorter, Murad, because a lot of the additional fluff that is usually in the brackets would be missing. So I'm guessing, actually, that's a good question. Is your Quran translation shorter than the average Quran translation?
It is because there is no bracketology.
Right. Bracketology. I like that. That's a good way of describing it. Bracketology.
Yeah,
So a really good one. Can he explain the word for 434, the infamous beat striking verse?
yeah, it means strike because all over the Quran it's mentioned with Moses striking the rock. Now, will you strike it lightly? Will you strike it with a toothpick? No, you will strike it with a stick. So it just means beat or strike. But people, of course, in the West, they try their best to hide this because they know that Islam will be very much questionable, especially how it treats women. So they try to hide this.
I remember on our last episode together, you actually I don't even think it was on our last episode. I think this is when it was me, you, and Lloyd. I mean, you were giving a presentation and you were going through some infamous Quran verses, and this was one of them. And you actually showed the exact same word is used in the context of Moses striking the rock. I think it was,
Yeah.
and you use this to prove, well, obviously it's an actual strike. It's actually hitting something precisely because you can use the word holistically elsewhere. And I think that's a really good and really clever way of doing it.
Yeah, this is like any Quran translator, he will have this with Moses as strike. So he will get back to his senses with Moses because he knows that you will never try and catch him red handed with his own translation to show his discrepancies.
It's so dishonest, you know. It's like
Yeah,
the same word is used elsewhere, and you have no problem translating it as strike. But when it's there and it's about women, and it's the 21st century, all of a sudden you have a problem.
yeah, and
This is why you need Murad's translation.
I
You don't
think
have to deal with this stuff. Hmm.
Mustafa Khattab took it a step further. He says something like discipline them.
Oh, see, so disingenuous. Or when they put in the brackets lightly to
Yeah,
kind of
that's the
downplay
classic
it.
bracketology. This is the
That's
science
classic.
of bracketology.
Oof, yeah. Um, when it's claimed a verse, this is again from Matthew, that can hold multiple meanings, how do you interpret the verse? So someone can't say that that means something else, or you just got it wrong.
Well, by looking at all other verses. So the Quran is a big book, it's not small, and it's very repetitive. So this verse, if someone tells me, Murad, it doesn't mean this, you are wrong, I will tell him, prove me wrong from the Quran itself, because I only let the Quran interpret the Quran. So I have multiple proofs for why I chose a certain word and how I translated the verse in a certain way.
This is a weird question. Is God described as a vampire or a zombie or a being that thrives on blood anywhere in the Quran? I I think this is just a weird troll question, like, unless it's something
Yeah.
else that I've totally missed. Um, let's have a look. Do so. We have Dejan. Good to see you again. Could Murad show us one or two sentences and compare Sin translation with his? Do you have any immediate examples to bring up, Murad? Or
I could say, but without showing, I could just say off the top of my head. We have, for
yeah,
example,
if you want to do that.
the abrogation verse. Two words are different. It says in any English translation, we do not abrogate a verse or cause it to be forgotten. I say, we do not transcribe of a sign or cause it to be forgotten. Transcribe is just copying something into written form. And the word ayah all over the Quran, it means sign. It's something like a miracle. So you either write it down as it so that it be preserved, like the parting of the Red Sea with Moses, or you just let it go. This is what the Quranic author is talking about. But because in another verse in the Quran it says that Allah transcribes what Satan says, that's why they say, well, now it's abrogate, because Allah would never transcribe what Satan says. But in the Quran, He transcribes what Satan says to have it as a record. Yeah, I know it's weird, it's very strange, but this is what the Quran author is saying. You see?
Wow. Yeah, that's incredibly profound. I tried to tell Chris the Speaker's Corner that he wouldn't get through the entire Quran in 12 hours if he kept on commenting on the text all the time, but he didn't listen. Yeah, that was my bad, I think. But I'm proud of what I did with the 14 hours. And we raised a good amount for charity, so I might do it again one time, but we'll see, because it was very draining to do that for so long, as you can imagine. Carol says the Quran is incredibly repetitive. Yes, absolutely. Looking for anything more. Oh, wait a sec. We have question: is there a reason the Quran contains stories that resemble those in the Bible? Did God repeat himself to Muhammad?
Well, these stories mentioned in the Bible, it assumes that the person is familiar with the Bible. That's why it's written in this very short format, because it assumes that the listener knows what it's talking about. That's the first thing. Second is that this author is really occupied with the idea that you become a warrior to try and recapture Jerusalem. So it gives you just snippets, and in the Quran actually it says snippets. They translate it as the best of narrations. No, it's the best of snippets. So qasas, it comes from scissors, Chris. It means these scissored parts, snippets. So the author is just giving you these snippets so that you get, like a motivational speech. You can hear just 2 or 3 minutes and then go to the gym. This is the Quran. It's giving you just very quick biblical snippets so that you hear them and then now wear your boots and let's go to war. This is the reality of the situation.
I definitely agree. I think I've been influenced by Odon Lafontaine. I'm not sure if you've come across his work, but he illustrates that it seems the context that the Quran is emerging in is talking very much about the conquest of Jerusalem. There is an impending attempt to retake Jerusalem, and we know historically that actually did happen. So it's I'm of that view as well.
Yes, me and Odon, we are good friends, and our works
awesome.
actually come together and they complement each other. And I told him, I will not read your book as I am translating the Quran. It's gonna influence me one way or another. Just I wanna be pure as I translate the Quran. And I came to the same conclusions. So actually, the Quran, as I say, it never mentions Christians. Odon also says that. It mentions the Nazarenes, which is a heretical sect, and it mentions the Judaizers, which Paul talked about in his letters. So the Quranic author is trying to gather all the losers to go and reconquer Jerusalem. This is how I see it.
Yeah, and that's, as of today, that's also my understanding as well. We have, do you correct the Mecca stuff as Becca?
Mecca is not Becca. Why did the author have Mecca and Becca? It's not because he is crazy. Yes, sometimes he is in other contexts, but here he specifically said Becca, which means Becca, close to Jerusalem, and Mecca. This is the original Mecca. We do not know exactly where it is. It might be in Syria or in Iraq. This is something that we are still struggling to find the original Mecca, but definitely not Saudi Arabia. Even in Wikipedia, you will find that it has no archaeological evidence.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a travesty when Muslims try to shoehorn this in when it simply isn't appropriate to do so. Yeah, it's one of those things, unfortunately. I think that's it. So I think, yeah, I just want to say thank you again for coming on, Murad. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. I hope that you continue with your work and you go on to do many more amazing things, because it's an absolute, like, it's a treasure to have you as a native Arabic speaker who can actually deal with the Quran on that kind of level. And I wish you all the best. So thank you very much for joining us, everyone. And yeah, if you want to check out Murad's work, if you want to get a copy for yourself, again, the link is in the description box below. And you can check out Murad's channel as well, which is, I believe it's just called Saint Murad. That's the name of your channel. That's correct.
Yeah, exactly. And I've just reached 10K. I'm very happy about that.
Nice, 10K. Yeah, it took me a long time to get to 10K. I remember how happy I was when I finally done that. So well done, man. And before you know it, you'll be 20, 30, 40, 50. It will just keep going up. So thank you very much, Murad. And take care, everyone. And I will see you all in the next one. Take care.